Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
Mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO. 3DO.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the 3DO company, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
I'm tired, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm cold. I'm still not used to having a beard, you know.
Are you in the scratchy phase?
Yeah, the last time I had a beard for a long period of time was 2018, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or 17. Probably 17. So it's been almost a decade. So I'm getting used to it again. It's like, I'm not used to this. My face feels weird all the time.
Yeah, you get used to it, though. You absolutely do. Like, I got over the scratchy phase pretty quickly. So, in fact, even the handful of times I've shaven it completely and let it grow back, even in that scratchy phase, it wasn't bad at all. But maybe I just got used to it. I was, whenever I would cleanly shave, always my first thought was, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And now my face is really cold. Because you get used to it being, you know, keeping your face kind of warm. So, but I think after years of like trimming it and trying all weird kind of different things with it, I think it's finally settled in and looks proper. So
I just got to remember to shave the neck, like, because I hate the hair on the neck.
Oh yeah, you got to do the neck beard. You got to do the neck beard. I do it once a week. So keeps it, because usually in a week it's coming in enough to where I'm like, I should probably get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Super Bowl happened this weekend.
Jesus Christ, man. I did not expect that outcome.
I didn't even have to watch it. I just saw the reaction on Discord and I was like, oh,
yeah,
not going well. I see.
Well, depending
on who you asked.
Well, the thing is, just about all of us expected the Chiefs to win because of like how the season has gone with like them winning close games in their favor and just kind of squeaking out wins, which they've been doing quite a bit. And there was a lot of controversy about the refs and that kind of like collusion, which I don't think it's genuinely true. I really don't. But people are so conspiracy brain these days. They just do that, right? Like, sure, they get calls, like controversial calls their way. They absolutely do. But it happens to all teams. Like, every team has gotten a controversial call their way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's when you are the hot team, everyone's kind of focused on you. So I can kind of see why there was that. But like press people asking like Mahomes, like, who's your favorite ref, is like, come on, guys, you're being really weird.
I know. It's like whenever like the Patriots were there and they were always asking him like the dumbest questions.
Yeah. I mean, and there wasn't really ref collusion during the Patriots era. I mean, there might have been, but I don't remember that talk nearly as much. Like a lot of people called foul over the tuck rule, which I totally understand. Like, that's a BS call to this day. That was a fumble. And then there was stuff like Deflategate, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That whole thing went like I still don't know that one.
It's a lot. I looked into it recently and I'm like, this is really kind of stupid. You know?
Well, my thought was always like they complained about the deflated balls, but like they were better during the point of the game when they were using the Colts balls.
Who fucking cares? It was such a long time ago. I don't think anybody cares anymore. But anyways, the game happened and the Eagles proceeded to stomp on the Chiefs. Like, the final score, 40-22, it was never that close. Like, at one point, I think it was 34-0 Eagles. Like, they completely just destroyed them. Like the Chiefs defense, the best thing they did was they stopped Saquon Barkley, because they're like, we need to focus on this guy so he doesn't explode. But I think the problem was they didn't focus on anything else, because like the passing game was pretty good. Jalen Hurts got a couple of really good runs in there as well. And then the defense for the Eagles just completely ran through the Chiefs O-line, and Mahomes got sacked 6 times, which is like the most he's ever been sacked. You know, like he threw 2 picks, he caused a fumble, like he looked like shit, like absolute shit, which when I was watching the game kind of here and there, but and I watched more of it than I expected because of the outcome. But I remember watching, I'm like, this proves that the Chiefs were kind of coasting this season.
Yeah.
You know, like, because they were squeaking out these wins against like lesser teams. And then, you know, they come up against like this season's Eagles team, which was a fantastic team. Some people are saying they might be one of the best teams in NFL history, potentially. And they just thoroughly dismantled the Chiefs.
They were honestly better than their the 2017 team.
Oh, the one that won the first Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And they were a better team than when they played the Chiefs in the bowl like 2 years ago. Much
I always
better
think
team.
with the 2017 game, Nick Foles just had the game of his life.
Yeah, well, he had the season of his life when he was playing that year. Like he was
True.
just like,
because wasn't it like
they
Carson
called him
Wentz
Big Dick Nick for a reason.
Yeah. Wasn't it like Carson Wentz got hurt like right before the Super Bowl and they threw him in like last second and he just like he played like all the game.
Yeah, and he won them that Super Bowl and then he was never good again. So, and funnily enough, Carson Wentz is the backup for the Chiefs right now. So he got to see his former team win the Super Bowl with him on the bench.
It's also Andy Reid's former team too, when you think about it.
He finally got the Eagles a Super Bowl win. He did it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't when he was coaching.
I always think of that really sad image of him just looking disappointed when like the Pats won in 03, I think it was.
But I love Andy Reid. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Like, they'll all be fine.
I did think it was really funny they showed fucking Chase Elliott more in the Super Bowl than they did Taylor Swift. It was kind of funny. Yeah.
It was weird when they showed the one time they showed her and everybody booed her. I'm like, are we still doing this, guys? Like,
I mean, it is Philadelphia fans. They are the most
shitheads.
They threw snowballs at Santa. I mean, let's be real.
What an amazing image that is.
That's still like one of the fun. Then they burn their city down whenever they win a Super Bowl. So.
That's what they did. That's what they did like 2 nights ago. It was great. It would have been fun to have been there. Like, I think I was describing it to somebody, like, that's the kind of situations where it's like you're like, I want to see what's going on. And you just like kind of hang out in the vibe, and then you start to see fire and you're like, all right, I'm getting out. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Like the moment fire erupts is a good time to leave a party whenever there's fire. Like, I'm out.
Like, for a second, I thought like, because the Chiefs kind of picked it up right at the end. I was like, oh, are they going to try like for like a Brady comeback? And I was like, no.
No, it was garbage time by that point. Like, the deficit was too big for them to even come back. And you can tell the Eagles D was like, nah, just let him have a couple. Who cares? Because it didn't matter at that point. So, I mean, I think that bowl really proves that we need to change the onside kick rules, because the onside kick rule is garbage. They should probably do something with that. But yeah, it was reffed pretty well. Nothing too crazy. Like maybe one iffy call for both teams, and that was kind of it. I thought the halftime show was good.
I heard mixed things on it. I mean, it's not my genre of music, so I was indifferent. But
well, I like Kendrick. I think Kendrick's great, and he deserves his flowers. You know, from how successful he's been recently, and I mean, a lot of that is just like basically Drake. Like, it's just him still like Drake has to retire at this point. I don't think he could do anything anymore. But like I've always said that I think Kendrick is a better artist to listen to when you have the headphones on and you're reading like the lyrics along with them, because he's that kind of artist, like very like conscious and like thought provoking and all of that. You know, like he's closer to a like a Talib Kweli kind of a guy, you know, if anybody knows who that is, like one of those kind of era of rappers. But to see him in like his pop star era, I'm like, hey, let him have it. Let him have it. So I thought it was fine. Yeah, like my uncle tried to imply it was DEI this halftime show, which that's a whatever. Well, the halftime shows I've noticed they show up in phases where it's like there'll be an era where, you know, it's like, oh, we have like the era of like the pop stars and like an era of like dad rockers and, you know, whatever. So this is like the hip hop era, basically. And I believe it's Jay-Z's company that handles the halftime shows.
Oh, okay.
So that probably explains it. And yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. But I told some people, I'm like, oh, if you like Kendrick but you haven't listened to him, like, go listen to Good Kid, Mad City. Like, that's the album you need to listen to for, it's like, why is Kendrick such a big deal? Listen to that record. It is a phenomenal album. Came out in 2012. It's brilliant.
I saw everyone complaining about it online, so I was like, all right, what's going on here? So I watched the replay. I'm like, I don't really get what the big deal is. I mean, it's like, it's not my genre, so I had no like real opinion, but I was like, it seemed fine.
It's just a lot of people, yeah, who don't listen to rap music being forced to listen to modern rap music and being like, oh, it's garbage. That's just all it is, you know. It's like, whatever, who cares, you know?
Yeah, you
didn't have to watch it. You didn't have to.
I wasn't offended by it. I was just like, yeah, it's not for me. I just moved on with my life.
I think it's just like old crusty white Republicans feel like they're now allowed to be like outwardly mean to black people now. So that's just what they're doing. That would be my guess, genuinely.
Oh.
Anyways.
Yeah, another Super Bowl down. Back to racing season now.
Yeah, racing season, spring training's coming up. So we still got some sports stuff to do. The NHL's, I believe, in their 2-week break. So hopefully the Blue Jackets could make the playoffs this year. That would be nice. They've only done it once in their 20 plus years as a franchise. So, which is not good, but we'll see. But yeah, racing. So probably every week you'll tell us about fucking driving cars, whatever.
Cars go vroom.
Cars go vroom. News. I'm trying to
come out.
We do have an NSO update. An NSO music update.
Oh, okay. I didn't even check that.
Yeah.
Let me boot up my app. Ooh,
yeah. It's a good choice, I would say, and one that's like, all right, yeah. One that makes me happy.
Let's see. Oh, Golden Sun?
Yeah.
Nice.
That is a really good soundtrack for the GBA. A soundtrack that I think is a better showcase of what the GBA's like sound. Well, it didn't have a sound chip, but like what the sound on the system can actually be. Like, there's some really good soundtracks on the GBA. It's just that kind of crunchiness can bother some people, but it never bothered me as much as it seems to bother everybody else.
Oh, that was Matoya Sakabura, the Tails guy. Yeah. That explains why I like it.
Yeah, and the battle theme is fantastic. So
some people really don't like his music, but I've always been a fan. So
sounded good to me. So all right, let's see what other news. So ESA have decided to make E3 2, but call it Icon with 2 eyes, 2 different looking eyes as well.
Woo.
Well, it seems to me that what it is trying to be more of a, like what E3 used to be before they let the general public in, you know, just kind of like an event where the main like publishers and all that in the video game industry can come together and be like report numbers and like network and that kind of stuff. That's just more of like a business conference type of deal.
Oh, so like E3 95, where like 3DO showed up and had no idea what a press conference was or like a presentation was.
Yeah, I think that's what it's like meant to be. And yeah, I think that's probably a good thing. Like, that's probably a good thing for the industry.
I mean,
just
E3 sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was gonna say, like, the first E3 is like famous for like all of those moments. Like, everyone will forever remember Sega making an ass of themselves. And then Sony's infamous 299, like all the classic moments, 3DO not knowing how to do convention. I always forget 3DO was at the first E3, and it was such a weird, like most things 3DO, they did not know how to do it right, and they tried to do it their way.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's most likely what it's going to be, and I think that's probably a good thing to let these like guys network and do whatever. Like, sure. Why not? Just keep the general public away from it, basically.
Yeah, we don't need...
That's kind of what killed E3.
Screaming.
Yeah, that's kind of what killed E3, really. So
because I always remember like the E3 like era of like the YouTubers. Like Spoonie had his infamous like betrayal thing.
Yep, I'll always remember that.
Yeah, Lord Cat's still mad about it.
Did he
and then
disappear off the face of the earth?
I haven't. The only reason I remember him is I watched a video about Spoonie and it came up again, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I remember when Screw Attack was there, they had a Keith Apicary, and he was just being Keith Apicary.
Yeah, and Keith Apcary's fine.
He is. He's still funny. Well, he's dead now, but
Oh yeah. So
still one of my favorite. Like, not a fan of Joe Rogan, but I do love when he makes an ass of himself. And like one of my favorites is when he was going on about he thought the dad character was an actual dad beating up his son. He didn't realize it was a joke.
He's very stupid.
Yeah, it's just funny. He gives this whole like deep like impression of it, and then like he's like, "Wait, this is an act. You guys are messing with me again, aren't you?" And I'm just like, "This is great."
Jamie, pull that up. Pull that up real quick. Let's see what else is there. Take Two says GTA 6 is not going to get delayed. It's going to release this fall. I figured it would. It's funny to see all the PC people getting mad that a PC port isn't day one. And when that happened, I'm like, I remember this when Red Dead 2 came out, when GTA 5 came out, that they always wait about a year to do the PC port. And all the PC people get mad. They're like, why don't you give it to us day one, you know? And GTA 6, it's the same thing again. My guess is GTA 6 coming out, price depending, will move hardware.
I'd say so. Yeah. I mean, that
So,
it's not going to be
as long as it's not $100, because that seems to be the theme or the rumor that it's going to be 100. Like, I feel like if it was $8, they could probably get away with $80. They could probably get away with 80, but I think any more than that would be too much.
I'm not paying $100 for a game. I'll pass on that one.
Not GTA 6. I mean, there's probably a couple Dreamcast and Game Gear games that, for collecting sake, I'm going to be an idiot and buy them for that much. But for like a brand new game like GTA 6, nah, because it'll be $30 in like a year.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. I'm not paying $100 for a new game.
Yeah, because you know it's going to go on sale, so there's no point.
Unless it's a Nintendo game, but I don't see Nintendo going to 100 anytime soon.
No. I mean, I feel like they're even a little hesitant to go to 70.
I think they are to a degree.
But I think Switch 2 is when we'll know. Like when they start unveiling, like, oh, Mario. If they show if it's Mario Kart 9 for the Switch 2 and it's $70, then we're like, fuck, everything's going to be 70 now. So that's when we'll know.
Yeah.
So. But speaking of Nintendo, this Friday, the GBA library is getting one of my greatest achievements. It's Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance. Great fucking game. And I'm glad to see it finally coming to NSO. Like, that's one of my favorite GBA games.
We'll have Wario Land 3 and 4 now on NSO. And
we still need one. We need 1 and 2, damn it.
We do eventually, but we have the 2 best in the series, so at least we have to start.
Though I think Wario Land 4 is aged better than 3.
See, my thing with them is they're different. They're 2 different perfections.
They are different games. I tried playing 3 when the Game Boy lineup first came out, and I did not care for it.
3 takes a little bit to get, because 3 is like a true puzzle platform. Like,
yeah, and I liked the idea of it. I don't know. Maybe I need to give it another try.
It's one of those ones I found when I first, because that was like one of the few Game Boy Color games I had as a kid that I played like the hell out of. The thing I found with Wario Land 3 is it's a game that really makes you like think about shit, because like I got stuck for years on levels because I could not figure them out, and then like it would just hit me one day of like, oh, you gotta roll down this thing and jump in rolling up this like weird tube thing to get to like this one specific point. And I'm like, right, this game was hard.
And Wario Land 4 is much more condensed.
4 is a more traditional game.
It has puzzle elements, but they're only really if you're trying to go for like a full completion and get everything. Other than that, it's more of a standard, like get to the end, like bounce on the frog, get the key, and get out kind of a thing. But it's its own vibe for a platformer, which I really like. It's not what I like about the Wario Land series in general is it's not trying to cop Mario Land. It's just trying to do its own thing, and I think it succeeds. So it's great.
Yeah,
It's great to see Wario Land 4 get another chance on Valentine's Day of all days, which is awesome.
All the single guys need something to do.
Play Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance.
Hey, Wario gets the girl in that one. Well, he gets a kiss, anyways.
Yeah. Let's see. Warner Brothers being stupid. There's a bit of the EA's being stupid. We won't go too deep into that. Sonic Shadow Generations has sold 2 million copies.
Good.
Hell yeah. I
Movie
mean,
did well.
Sonic always sells though. Like every Sonic game sells at least like 2 million copies, I think.
True.
So,
but this one sold well and has got good reviews, which is rare.
Yeah, there you go. Critically and commercially successful. So, which is great. And we have that Sonic racing game. I assume that's coming out this year. And then there was a trademark for, I think it was Sonic Blitz was filed. It could either be like them trying to make another fighting game for Sonic, or it's going to be some bullshit mobile game.
That sounds like a mobile game title.
That's the two prevailing theories. Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, this is the healthiest the Sonic series has been in a long time. So I'm hoping they keep that momentum going. I
think so. I feel like, knock on wood, the guys at Sega are a little bit smarter about all this stuff. You know, I think they've seen like the prolonged success Yakuza's had, and of course all the Atlas stuff doing really well, and probably them realizing with Sonic, like, we don't have to do all this weird stupid shit, and also we can take our time with the mainline games. We don't have to rush. Like, we get a Sonic game every year, but it doesn't always have to be like a mainline game. It can be a side game. It could be a mobile game. It could be a collection, you know, like they can sort of take their time with the Sonic stuff and make sure they get them right, you know?
It helps too that the movies have been like consistently good. Like, I think people actually pointed out that it's actually really amazing that like the first movie is really good in itself. The second movie was even better. And then the third movie was even better than that. And it's like, when does that happen these days?
That is crazy, but it's awesome. Like it's great to see, and I think they can keep the momentum going. Like, I've heard of rumors of like an Adventure 1 and 2 remakes. I've heard those are in the rumor mill. I've heard a big Heroes remaster in the rumor mill as well. I think both of them make sense. Like, I would like Sonic Heroes deserves a second chance, and Adventure 1 and 2, I think a lot of people have said those games deserve a remake. Like, properly modernize them. Like, they're still fun games, but when you play them, you're like, man, if these had more modern controls, they'd probably be even better.
Yeah, honestly, as long as they keep that charm to them, which I know some people don't like, but
I think they would lean into it. Like, I think they're self-aware enough to know they can lean into some of the sillier stuff and get away with it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let's see. Apparently Rocksteady is making another Batman game.
I hope it's good. That's all I...
Yeah, it'll probably be a few years till we see it. So maybe Arkham World is real. Maybe we'll finally see Arkham World.
Make another Asylum style game. Like, don't go super crazy. Just make a simple, fun adventure. And people will like it, hopefully. That's
what they should do. Yeah, don't do Arkham Knight. Do something smaller. Maybe somewhere between Asylum and City.
Don't kill Batman. That's all you have.
Yeah. I wouldn't do that. We're having a state of play. I believe it's the 13th or the 12th or something.
Oh, if it's the 13th, it'll be during the super show. Let's
see. State of play. When is that coming out? It is. It's tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
February 12th at 5 p.m. EST. So I'll be like getting ready to leave work at that point. The only rumors I know about the state of play are that Marathon's going to show up, which I think it kind of needs to, and that the God of War Greek Saga games are getting a proper remaster collection re-release, which is something that should happen, you know, games that people would be excited to see. So it'll be curious to see if that's real, what games are in there, how they're doing the whole thing. Because really it needs to be 1, 2, 3 Ascension, and then the 2 PSP games. Like, it needs to be all of them. So, because didn't they do that on the PS3? Like a big collection of all of them?
I actually own that. It was called the God of War Saga. So basically it was...
Yeah.
They just stuck 3 and the HD collection into one disc. Well, I mean, one case, and then they gave you a voucher, which mine didn't come with because I bought it used.
For the 2 PSP games.
Yeah, but I mean, you could get the PSP HD collection for like $1 at that point, so it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. So, yeah, that would be nice to see. Because there's a lot of people who haven't been huge fans of the more recent God of War games and prefer the older style. So them kind of being like, oh yeah, these games exist. Like here they are. Because it feels like Sony has like downplayed that era of God of War, which is weird to me. I don't know why, because I find those games to be really fun. It's
probably because David Joffe's not really working with Sony anymore, and they don't really know what to do with the series, or at least that part of the series anymore.
Yeah, well, I think they kind of left him, because somebody asked him about the God of War reboot, and he said he was fine with like them going in a different direction and doing everything. And he said it's all worked out. He's just like, I wish they would have told me, because they didn't tell him. They just kind of moved on.
Well, they kind of kicked him to the curb after
Ascension.
Well, even it was also the Twisted Metal reboot, because that bombed, and they were like, "Yeah, we're done with you, bye."
Yeah. So, but it is what it is. So yeah, we'll see what they do with the state of play. They kind of need a state of play to get people excited again, because right now people are not happy with Sony. I mean, there's been like Concord, and then like they're just canceling a bunch of live service games. And then what was it? The PlayStation Network was out for like a whole day or something.
Yeah, it was like
I saw something like that.
A day and a half, I think. It wasn't nearly as bad as the infamous outage from years ago, but
yeah, but still, it's like Sony is not really in the best of spots either right now. So, and they'll remind everybody about Ghost of Yotei, which I believe is this year. So.
Yeah, Sucker Punch is just doing their thing in the background, like they always do. So,
oh yeah, I'm sure they'll be fine. They're
like the most like normal Sony studio right now. They're just like straight up doing their thing and not they're doing their thing and just not being controversial at all.
Well, it's like, yeah, they're not Naughty Dog, who are kind of in the spotlight. They're not Insomniac, who are just pumping Marvel shit out like crazy. They're not Santa Monica, which made the God of War games. Now people are like, what are they doing? What are they doing? I hear they're working on like a new IP. Who knows? Yeah, they just kind of chill and just do their thing.
Guerrilla's doing at this point. Are they making
probably something Horizon? That'd be my guess. That's probably just what they do now.
I want another Killzone, damn it.
Yeah, well, apparently Insomniac recently, I guess back in the day, they pitched the Resistance 4, and Sony turned them down. Which is weird, because Ted Price was all like, I remember Ted Price saying that he was done with that series, but... Well, maybe saying no to the pitch is what kind of killed it. Maybe. I mean, they did kind of end the series with 3, but that doesn't mean anything in gaming. Exactly. Doesn't mean a damn thing. Let's see. Kamiya, somebody asked him about Okami, and Kamiya said people shouldn't play the Wii version. Because I guess he's recently been playing the HD version, which I guess he hadn't played before. And somebody asked him about the Wii version. He's like, "Oh, that version's trash." I think it's because he didn't work on the Wii port. Yeah, Ready at Dawn made it, and I'm pretty sure it was notably known as a good port. He's probably just got sour grapes about it for some reason. Yeah, because he made the PS2 version. So, like, I get why people would prefer the Wii version for that game. I totally do. Well, the funniest part about the Wii version is the cover art infamously has an IGN rating on it if you look closely. Yeah, and that's the gross part, I think. I kind of if that was the reason it wasn't definitive, I'd be like, you are correct. Absolutely. No, he's just mad that Ready at Dawn made it, which is actually kind of sad. Ready at Dawn no longer exists. But yeah, it's just Kamiya being Kamiya. No big deal. Yeah. For some reason, Yuji Horii had to remind everybody Dragon Quest 12 exists, or that they're still working on it. Because recently, Dragon Quest 3 Remake did something unprecedented. It exceeded Square Enix's sales expectations. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, damn, better than they expected. I'm like, this is cause for celebration. Dragon Quest stay winning, right? You remember how when like
when Square and Enix merged, and everyone blamed Enix for the decline of Square, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure the Enix shit was doing wonderful throughout that
Yeah.
period of time.
And Dragon Quest always does. Dragon Quest is like Sonic. It's one of those consistent sellers. It's always going to do well. You know,
Even if it, which is funny because there's never been a bad Dragon Quest mainline game, but I'm sure if they made like a mediocre mainline, it would still sell like fucking insane.
the worst one is 2.
Yeah, but I mean that's.
But it's not a bad game at all.
I thought you were gonna say Swords, which I was like, well, I mean,
Swords isn't mainline, and
No.
Swords is cute.
it's an
cute.
interesting thing. It's just one of those things where it's like, this is you play it once, you never play it again.
You play it for like 15 minutes and go, that was adorable, and then you move on with your life.
Yeah,
which is what I did. So, but anyways, he had to remind everybody that Dragon Quest 12 is still being worked on because I guess people thought it got canceled. And I'm like, you people are really fucking stupid.
well, no,
Like, of
those
course
people,
it's being worked on.
Those people thought Akira Toriyama did everything. Which, I mean, rest in peace to the guy, but he was just the artist.
Oh, God, these people don't know their fucking shit. Anyways, yeah, somebody asked him about 12, and he said they'll release more information about the game when they're ready to. He says that he may have announced it too early. I think he did. But yeah, it's like I wasn't ever worried about it. I'm like, they'll show it when they're ready to show it. You know, it's like Persona 6. Like, Persona 6 is coming. It's just they'll tell you when they're ready to tell you.
Yeah, it's like Final Fantasy 17. It's being made. We don't know when.
The next 3D Mario. Like, there are certain games where you're like, it'll happen. You're just waiting on it. So, fuck, I lost my train of thought. But oh yeah, Persona 6. I have a feeling it might get announced this year.
We'll see. I mean, I won't.
I don't think it'll release. I don't think it'll release this year. It probably doesn't need to, especially with how stacked this year seems to be with new games. But I could very well see them, like, maybe at Summer Game Fest or the Game Awards or something, be like, "Oh, here's Persona 6. Here you go."
I wonder if it'll be like when 5 was announced, and they'll just give us a picture of some chairs and be like, "It's coming," and then show us
Winter 2014.
Coming for PS3, and then like a week later. Oh yeah, also PS4.
I feel like because of all that happened with 5, with Persona 6, they're waiting till they can see the finish line to actually announce it. Yeah. They're like, we don't have to do that. Like, we know people get excited the moment we unveil it, so let's just wait until we know when it's coming out so we don't have to delay it.
Well, people also forget too, that was during the period where Atlas, like the Index Corporation, went bankrupt and they were like, didn't know what to do, and then Sega came in and saved them.
Yeah.
So there was obviously a whole bunch of shit going on in the background.
Exactly. So not worried about Persona 6 at all. And not worried about Dragon Quest 12 at all. Like, I know people are worried about it being darker and being more action oriented, but I think we'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be this drastically crazy game. It might have some new stuff and some different stuff in there, which I welcome, but when it gets announced, don't worry, I will talk about it. Let's see what else. Resident Evil 5 and 6 have been recently classified by the ESRB, so I think they're getting current gen releases reports or whatever.
That's good for one of those games.
Sure, yeah. Oh, God, I both times I tried to play RE6, I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore. I don't like this game.
Train. That is all.
Fucking stupid Train. Let's see. Apparently Yuji Naka updated his old mobile game. I thought he was in jail. He's serving a
Sky Soldier 2.
He's serving a suspended prison sentence, whatever the fuck that means. Does that mean he's on house arrest? I don't know, but yeah. Apparently, yeah, he has a mobile game called Pirates of Coin, which was released in like 2016 or whatever, and he like updated it, and I was just like, oh, sure. I mean, I'm never gonna play it. It was just I saw his name and I was just like, oh, that's funny.
The only solo game of his I ever played was Rodeo the Sky Soldier. So
that game's okay.
The Wii version's okay.
Yeah. I do like Ivy the Kiwi. I like that game.
And then Balan Wonderworld.
One of these days, I will play that game.
One of these days when I can get it for less than $5.
I wish somebody would just give it to me.
Yeah,
It's
if I
like,
just
here you go.
came across it.
In a dumpster, be like, sure, and then I'd sit down and play the whole fucking thing. And I'm just waiting because I guarantee you, in like 5-ish years, there's going to be a slew of YouTube videos of people saying Balan Wonderworld wasn't that bad. I guarantee it. People are going to be like, that game's actually like kind of good. I bet right
Then
now.
it's
And
gonna
like-
just like
and by
shoot up in
2030,
price.
it's going to be some weird hidden gem, and it's going to be $200.
Yeah.
I can just feel it, and it's going to be fucking disastrous. Ugh.
But anyways, I think we should
That's
probably
all
get
I
into
got. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
we should probably get into our topic for this episode.
Yeah, sorry,
Um,
Trip. Sorry, Trip.
Yeah.
Because he's
um,
obviously listening to this.
That'd be nice, but I don't see it. I think he's currently in his doesn't like to talk about 3DO phase from what I've heard, so I doubt he's looking into this.
I mean, you go to his Instagram, and he does not reference 3DO in it.
Which I think he did at one point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he probably just goes through phases of like liking it and not liking it and liking it and not liking it. I don't know. I don't
he
get
saw that people are actually caring about it again, so he's like, I hate that thing.
What a weirdo. But a very important weirdo.
I mean, anyone who works in games is kind of a weirdo, I always think, so.
Oh, yes, absolutely. They're all nut jobs, but we kind of love them for it, don't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, say what you will about Trip Hawkins, but he is arguably one of the most important people in video games.
Yeah, because he is the founder of one of the most important publishers in video gaming, for better or for worse, and the creator of one of the most important video game series, for better or for worse. So, yeah.
And he made 3DO.
That's what I was talking about. What the fuck do you think I was talking about?
Oh, yeah. Fuck that other company.
Yeah, Ubisoft.
Digital chocolate.
Digital chocolate. He's made a lot of upstart video game companies.
He has
I've noticed.
And
Yeah.
he's on the board of like 4 other ones.
Yeah, which is just weird. But I guess that's how he's able to just kind of hang out. Because I don't think he gets like money from EA anymore. I don't think so. Because he left them in like the 90s, I think, fully.
He left them like a year into 3DO because I believe he reached a point where he was like, he could not balance working on both.
Yeah.
And he had to choose one or the other. So he obviously chose the growing company for what it was worth at the time, and left EA and was full-time 3DO and tried to keep that ship afloat. And I believe he was at 3DO right until the end.
Yeah. So real quick, we're talking about Trip Hawkins, the main guy who created the 3DO and everything. So I guess we could talk a little bit more about his history, and that like growing up, he was always kind of like a weird nerd businessman type of guy. Like back in the day, he tried to make like a Dungeons and Dragons for football, basically like a pen and paper kind of football game. And that really didn't work out. Like he went to fucking Harvard and shit. And then worked at Apple for a few years in the early 80s. Like I think Wozniak was still there when he was there. I think like obviously like Jobs was there.
Yeah. I think Wozniak is still considered part of the company, but he just doesn't do anything anymore. He just lives.
Yeah. He just gets a check for existing. Must be nice.
I mean, a little bit of an off thing, but like one of the greatest interviews with Wozniak I ever saw was he was interviewing he was talking with Steve-O of all people because they were friends from Dancing with the Stars. And he was talking about how they went to an Apple store because Steve-O wanted the new iPhone. And he was like, "Oh, I'll let you use my employee discount." And he went up to the counter, he's like, "Here's my employee card." It was employee number 1 on the card. It's just a funny thing. And the employees at the store were like, "What?"
You don't think there was one person who worked there who went, "Holy shit, Wozniak"?
They're probably like, "Who's this guy?"
There might have been one, but yeah, most of them are probably just 20-year-olds who don't know, which is whatever. But yeah, he worked there for a little bit, but then Tripp left them, and I think it was like in 1882 to create this new upstart video game company called Electronic Arts. You know, what a stupid fucking name, right? Like this thing ain't gonna go anywhere. I was wrong. It did. It like EA is still a big force in the gaming industry today. And yeah, Tripp was the guy who founded it and got it off the ground. And I liked his idea with Electronic Arts at the start. Like the term Electronic Arts was like, hey, he saw that video games were very much an untapped potential at the time. And there was a lot of room for growth and doing new, weird, interesting things. And basically, it was originally just a publisher where he would take all of these like weird PC games that he was seeing and being like, oh, we should like publish that, give it some exposure, put some, a name behind it. And they were doing that for a few years, and it was working to a certain degree. But really, the company didn't break through until they created. Until Tripp finally decided to create the football game he always wanted to make, because it'd be much easier to do it on the computer, because then all the math is being done by the computer rather than by hand. Because, sports stats are just bro math. It's bro math. So he's like, oh, so let's just make a football game, but I need somebody to endorse this football game. Because I think at the time, like Joe Montana football was a thing. So they're like, we need somebody. Should we get a player? No, maybe we should get like a coach. A coach might be a better fit for it, because if it's going to be a simulation football game, like that name would be better suited for it. And then I think Tripp probably just turned on like Sunday Night Football and saw Pat Summerall and John Madden and went, boom, John Madden's the guy. And so he called Madden and decided to, and Madden agreed to jump onto it. So there's recently there was a documentary done about the Madden series that's on Amazon Prime. I think it's like 4 episodes. And I have some issues with it, particularly in the latter half when they start talking about like the competition and the exclusive rights, that whole jargon. But the first half where they talk about like the making of Madden and sort of like the history of getting it off the ground and the struggles it had, where Madden wanted like 11 men on each side of the field, and it was like the original Apple II version couldn't really handle it, and that the company could have potentially gone under if Madden didn't succeed. Seeing all that stuff was like really fascinating, and Tripp is even in the documentary. Like he's featured pretty predominantly throughout it. So it was cool to see all of that stuff around Tripp and him like being passionate about football and video games and wanting to get this football game off the ground. And funnily enough, the original John Madden that was on like Apple II, and it did not run well. People really didn't like it, but they were able to get a second crack at it, and they wanted to do it for the console, but they couldn't do it for the NES because Nintendo's strict rules for cartridges and publishing. And Tripp was like, fuck that, that's stupid. So he went to Sega and said, hey, Sega, can you give us like a better rate than what Nintendo's giving? And Sega at the time, they had better rates than Nintendo, but not super much more. Like it was just enough more to be attractive to like, all the other companies. But EA was just like, this seems, we're not going to do this. And Sega said, oh, what are you going to do? Reverse engineer our fucking console so you can just put our games on it anyways? And that is exactly what they did. So that's why EA carts for the Genesis look weird and wonky.
Yeah,
because
that yellow clip on the side.
The little yellow tab, and they're bigger. And yeah. And so they were able to reverse engineer the Genesis, which they were going to take them to court for it. Sega was, but they were like, you know what? Instead of doing all this bullshit or whatever, let's just work out a deal. And so they worked out a deal. And so all the EA games have the Sega approval, but EA got a better rate than the other companies did. So that's how they were able to be successful with making the Madden games. And yeah,
you know what's interesting? I always kind of wondered, because they stuck with their unique cartridges and cases and everything, you think they probably spent more money in the long run because they had to design their own like molds and plastics and everything?
Maybe that's very possible, but I know that by the time the first Madden game came out and it had that like particular look to it, and it sold really well.
True.
Like the John Madden football, the original one on the Sega Genesis, which I may still have that cartridge because I used to play it on original hardware. It's surprisingly a really good game, even by like today's standards. Like it's a pretty solid football game. Doesn't have the NFL license or the player's license. That wouldn't become a thing till a few years later. But it was, pretty for its era. Like that's pretty good, like simulation style football, and it was very successful and did super well. And I think it was like the best-selling game on the Genesis that year. You know,
it wouldn't surprise me.
Becoming a long-standing tradition of every year, Madden like the top 10 selling games like every fucking year. And it started right at the beginning, and that was really what allowed EA to become the big juggernaut that it is today. So, and Trip was at the center of it all, trying to make it work, and having Madden there and getting his approval on everything. And then, so I would just recommend watching that Madden documentary if you're curious, because there's a lot of really interesting information in there. But there becomes a certain point where it turns less into like a history lesson and more of like EA propaganda.
Yeah.
Like how they talk about people criticizing the games nowadays, and like how they talk down like Game Day and NFL 2K and all of that other stuff, you know, trying to be like, oh, this is like competition. Like the way they talk about the NFL 2K series really kind of like they recognize they were good games. They absolutely do. But the way that they talk about them feels a little like they're a little pissed about it, because they are better games than even the Maddens of that era. And that was an era where Madden was peaking. And the NFL 2K games were better. So, and they tried to imply that the only reason they got the exclusive NFL rights was because when NFL 2K5 hit, it was $20, like brand new. And that apparently pissed NFL off enough to where they just gave the rights to EA. I don't think that's how that happened.
No.
I don't think that's how that happened. I could see the NFL being upset about it to a specific degree, but probably not to that degree at all. So
it's really funny how EA did that in two separate occasions, because they did the same thing with the NASCAR license. Like they were getting their ass kicked by Papyrus and Monster Games, who were making just better games. So they were like exclusive rights, and then those went away. And then NASCAR games went like really fast.
What's funny is that like at the same time, there's like, say, the NBA games, like the 2K games far surpassed the EA ones, and they couldn't do the exclusive license thing, so they kind of had to die. And just doing a quick Google search, 2K, Take-Two do have exclusive NBA rights. I didn't think they did, but apparently they do. So
it's like how
interesting, because the NBA 2K
baseball
series also has its own issues.
It's like weird too how like Sony has like the exclusive rights for baseball.
I don't think they don't. I don't think they do. I think it's just nobody else makes baseball games.
I thought they did, and that was the reason why they had to put the games on Xbox and Nintendo's, because the Major League Baseball was like, guys, if you're gonna make these games for us, we need them to be on everything.
I don't think so. Hold on, let me check.
They might not, for all I know. I just know.
No, Sony does not have exclusive rights to the MLB. It's just there was like that era where there were baseball games coming out all the time, and it just slowly dwindled down to where MLB The Show is just kind of the only one standing because it's Sony and they have the money to do it. It just kind of became the big one.
Also, baseball is very popular in Japan, so I was kind of...
Oh, yeah, there's still Japanese baseball games being made all the time, but over here in the West, it's dwindled considerably. And I didn't think Sony had exclusive MLB rights. It's just nobody else wants to make a simulation baseball game, because like, why bother? But yes, the MLB did force Sony to make it for the Switch and the Xbox and everything, because they're like, hey, if you're going to still keep making these, they need to be multi-plat. And I think that's what they would have said to any other company if they were going to make an MLB game. It has to be multi-plat, which I think is a fair thing, you know?
Yeah.
And this year's MLB The Show is not coming out on Game Pass. And that's probably because they don't need to, because people are going to buy it anyways. So.
Oh, yeah.
But weirdly enough, the NHL games, there's still the NHL 2K series and then the EA NHL series. So It's weird. It's weird how sports video games, we had an era where they were everywhere. And there were like all of these different variations and all these companies doing like simulation, arcade, somewhere in the middle, all that stuff. And now we're at a point where it's like, oh, if you want to play this specific sports video game, like there's one, maybe two. And then that's it. There's some like weird indie stuff here and there, but you know, most people who want to play, say like a football game, their only real option now is Madden, which is a problem. You know, but Trip was long gone at that point, and people have asked him about his opinion on the Madden series these days, and he wishes it was more simulation based and they didn't focus so much on the graphics and like Madden Ultimate Team and all of that stuff. That he wishes it was more like the more hardcore simulation that it was originally meant to be, and I think his points are valid.
Trip's a very interesting guy when you watch interviews with him. Like, all of his ideas are pretty good. He just doesn't always execute them the best.
He's George Lucas.
Yeah,
he's an ideas man, but when it comes to the execution, it's a bit iffy. He needs the right people around him to make his ideas work, and that's very much George Lucas syndrome.
Because when he was at EA, he wasn't in charge by the end. He had stepped down from like running the day-to-day. He was just a member of a chairman on the board.
Yeah,
by like around like 91, I want to say. So when he went to start 3DO, he wasn't running EA anymore, but he was still kind of involved. That's how the very early days of 3DO, they had like all these EA was basically a first party developer for the 3DO.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
You know, another parallel I just noticed that I've never really thought about until now.
What's that?
Do you notice both the 3DO and EA logos, the shapes? Like,
oh yeah, they're both shape oriented. Yeah.
I just thought of that. I'm like that is a weird parallel that I'm just noticing now.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I love the original EA logo. Like that that classic one is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like how they've kind of brought it back, not the same way, but at least they're calling it Electronic Arts again, and the shapes are in the background. They're not the same,
yeah,
but they're kind of there.
There are certain things EA's doing now that I think are the more correct things to do. Like the way they're propping up some indie games and all that stuff. But they are doing some like I'm really worried about BioWare. I think a lot of us are with how that's going, because I don't even think Veilguard did that bad. I really don't. Yeah. It's just people cry foul about it because of DEI or some bullshit, but who fucking cares? But there's just other things like they're doing that Battlefield thing. We'll see if that's worth it at all. And Criterion's getting moved over to Battlefield. So Need for Speed's being put on hold. But I think it's a good thing for that series, because I think the last handful of games have done okay, but it hasn't been like a big thing. Like Need for Speed is not, it doesn't have the same reverence that it used to, I think. So, I mean, my solution, just make another fucking Burnout game.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. Like when they put Criterion on Need for Speed, everyone was like, oh, that's cool. But then people were like, you should just make another Burnout.
Yeah, like if they were like, let's do Burnout Paradise 2, people would be all over that shit. Absolutely. Like Burnout Paradise 1 is still fucking good. Just do a modern Burnout Paradise. There you go. Or yeah, just make another Burnout game. I think people would really like another Burnout game. And I think Criterion would like to make a Burnout game because it's a very different style racing game too.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. Like that's the problem EA's had recently. It's becoming an EA episode again, but that's fine. The big problem with that Need for Speed has had is that they put like racing game devs on it, but they're not the devs that made Need for Speed.
Exactly.
And that's like, because the problem is like, they're never gonna, Black Box was like the perfect dev for Need for Speed. And now that they're gone, it's just kind of like the series has been in a weird limbo all over the place for years.
Yeah. So yeah, EA's just in a weird spot right now. But anyways, but Trip was able to help EA become the big success that it was with Madden, and then they were doing a lot of other stuff at that time. Like they had like the I remember the Jungle Strike games, people like those. There's a really cool fucking game they made on the Genesis called Poltergeist, where it's like you have to like scare people out of the house. Like EA at this era was really interesting.
They did a lot of
like Electronic Arts. Yeah, it's in the name, Electronic Arts. They were making a lot of like kind of artsy shit.
A
It
lot
was
of
cool.
people don't know, but they were one of the kick-starting points for Naughty Dog. Like EA
Yep.
signed them on for a brief contract. I think they Jason Rubin famously said they got like $200 in a advance or something. They were like, cool.
Yeah. But even then is when they were like getting in like Bullfrog and some of these other small devs. And then they were making their own dev studios and starting to make like their Maddens and other games like that. So they were, definitely becoming like the big player that they are now.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think
it was
about
all and it was all Trip Hawkins just kind of like leaving probably a steady job at Apple to try to make it work.
Mm.
And his vision succeeded.
Oh yeah. No,
And
like,
I think
crazy.
because of that is what made him go, oh, I could probably do this again, but take it one step further, and that's do hardware. Jump into the hardware, because I think them being able to reverse engineer the Genesis, I think gave him the idea of, oh, I could probably just make my own fucking console.
Well, it's interesting too because at the time, so the 3DO is a really weird case where it technically is a 5th generation console, but it came out significantly earlier than the true 5th generation console. So it's in that weird kind of in between phase with like the Jaguar and stuff. So when the 3DO was first being developed, like it really was like Trip had this idea that like, because like CD based media was still completely a confused mess at the time. Like Sega CD was a thing. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't blowing up the world either.
No.
Nintendo was attempting to make a CD add-on. We all know what happened with that. And I think Neo Geo had their CD thing, which was infamous for being slow. And the Turbo Graphics CD was also a thing, I think, around that point. But like,
like
it was
that was the era of the CD add-on, because in the middle of this generation where cartridges were still the standard medium is when the CD-ROM became a thing, where it's like, oh, we can now cram 700 megabytes of data onto this disc. They're cheaper to manufacture, they can hold more data, and it's pushing new technology. And I think all of the console makers were like, oh, we could probably do something with this, but let's not just make a new system because that would be very expensive. So let's just kind of make an add-on to everybody's pre-existing console to where it's like, hey, attach this thing to your Sega and you can play more games on it, more kind of, more graphically advanced games, kind of a thing. It's almost like weirdly like the PS4 Pro of its era, like almost like a mid-gen refresh, but you can install it on your original hardware. But I think Trip saw the pushing forward with the CD and it's like, that's just what we're gonna do. We're just gonna make a CD based console. And I don't think his was the first, but it was one of the first.
It was the first 32-bit, I want to say. Definitely wasn't the first, because there was definitely ones in Japan. I believe it was the first standalone, maybe.
Yeah, I feel weirdly enough, looking at like, if you look at the timeline, it might be the first like CD home console that's not an add-on. It might be, because it came out late 93. And by that point, like the Sega CD was maybe a year old at that point.
The Neo Geo CD might have been out, but that was technically just a CD version of a cartridge-based console.
Yeah. I mean, that's but that's like kind of close enough. Oh, let's see. That came out in Japan September 9th, 1994.
Okay, so it was that. Oh, maybe the CD.
And this came out October 4th, 1993. I think the CDI was later.
Was it?
I think,
Actually, I think that's actually the reason why the CDI is kind of infamous, because of the fact that like people believe it was trying to find CDI on Wikipedia is.
Yeah, it gives you the optical media format, and it's like, that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on.
Oh, there it is. Oh, it was okay. CDI was first. It was 1990.
I don't think it was 1990. I think that was the year the CD compact disc interactive media form came out, but not the console. I could be wrong on that, but that 1990 sounds way too early.
Player models. Philips models 91, the first one.
91 seems really fucking early. I don't know why, but it does.
91 makes more sense considering the fact that that system always gets hyped up as like next gen, but it's like weaker than the Super Nintendo and Genesis. But if it came out in 91, it actually makes more sense. I think it's because the games that people associate with it are the Nintendo ones, and those came out way later.
Yeah, and the CDI was, weirdly enough, I don't think it was ever really advertised as a game console.
No, it really wasn't. It was
like not until they got the Nintendo games.
It was a media player that could play games.
Yeah, like it very much looks like a VHS that you plug a controller into, or VCR that you try to plug a controller into. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it does technically count because it can play games on it, but you know.
Interestingly enough, though, CDI is an interesting comparison to the 3DO because of the fact that they were kind of a similar idea. Although in the 3DO's case, it was trying to be a video game console first.
Yes, yeah, because in this era, companies really didn't know what to do with the CD format because it was this whole new medium and it can do all this kind of stuff. You know, like the PC games also exploded on CD because you didn't have to use fucking 16 floppy disks anymore to run fucking Doom. You can just put a disc in and you're good, right? So it was just this whole era like where everything changed. And I think the console makers were not sure what to do. And I think, Philips, because they had a hand in making the CD in general, were like, oh, we should jump on this and try to do something with this form, you know, to show people what it's capable of. And the CDI feels very much like a glorified tech demo for what CDs could be.
Yeah.
You know? And it did eventually get games, but it just doesn't feel like it was made to be, as we said, like a video game console, the way, say, a 3DO was. You know, but I think the people at Philips making the CDI were not video game people.
No, they really weren't. Which the difference here with the 3DO is Trip's idea in theory was very interesting.
Yeah.
The time he came up with it, though, it was never going to work. And
No, I think he was too late because Nintendo and Sega had kind of established how video game distribution is going to be. And we've still been kind of riding on that ever since.
Well, also because his big idea was like, he did not look at it like, he didn't look at like Sega and Nintendo at the time, or even NEC or SNK to a lesser extent. He was looking more Atari. Oh yeah, they were still technically around. Kind of. His idea though was instead he was looking at the home media side of things, like he was looking at VHS. Because his whole idea was he was going to make video games a standard, which in theory kind of makes sense, but in practice, video game technology, especially at that point, was so rapidly evolving, it would have never worked. Like, honestly, nowadays, with how it's kind of plateauing, it might actually make more sense these days.
I mean, nowadays, Trip's idea of standardizing video games kind of came to fruition with this thing called Steam.
Yeah.
Steam is now like the target platform for basically every video game now. And I think that's what Trip wanted 3DO to be. Sort of like when companies make games, you know, 3DO is kind of the example of what they should do with it.
Yeah.
And then if it goes to other platforms, who fuck cares, right? But I think that was his idea, was to overtake everybody by reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, the wheel was already getting reinvented and was already rolling, and Trip couldn't catch it. And even if he was trying to make a new wheel, it wasn't going to be as good as that wheel. It just wasn't going to happen.
Because the way it worked is, we've explained it in past episodes, but a bit of a refresher. He had basically contracted a developer known as named David Needle. There was a few other people involved, but David Needle's the most predominant, who designed the basic hardware specs, like the whole process. He basically designed what the 3DO runs off of, which for 1993 was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it was Dave Needle and RJ McCall.
Yes.
The guys who did the links.
Yes. Yep. They were involved with Epics, and they had
which is a great piece of machinery itself.
The 3DO is a very simple and powerful base to work with. And I think for the time that was really smart.
Yes.
Like there was no unnecessary bullshit like within the Jaguar. There was no like Nintendo like secrecy, and it had a decent power to it, and it was very affordable.
Yeah, and I think that's because they got the guys who made the Lynx, and yeah, as far as I know, the Lynx is not a complicated piece of machinery to work with,
but it's surprisingly powerful for what it is.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I think the Lynx and 3DO both suffer from the same issue, which was too expensive, and people really didn't want to support it because of the lack of price and proper install base. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think if 3DO was treated like any other console, you know, like it was just like, oh, like 3DO takes the hit on the hardware so that, you know, the software or whatever, like how it is nowadays, they probably would have been fine. They probably would have been able to get the M2 out and kind of have a run at it.
Like if Trip had made a proper partnership with Panasonic and actually gave them a cut of the profits from the games, they could have sold the system at a loss. They probably wouldn't have designed it as stupidly over-designed as the FC1 is. As much as I love the FC1 is stupidly over-designed.
Yeah.
Because going back to it, his whole idea was it was going to be like how VHS was, where the basic specs for how to make a 3DO system were here. You could buy the rights to make one, and then you'd get the specs and you'd make the hardware. And then you basically make your money off of the hardware. Meanwhile, 3DO would get all they'd make their money basically off the game sold. It was essentially the razor and blades mentality, but unfortunately, when people can't afford the razor, no one's going to buy the blades.
Well, and the razor and blades theory or idea only works if it's the one company doing everything. Like if Panasonic's only making the hardware and not getting a cut on the software, yeah, if they're only selling the razor, you know, and then not getting the money back on the blades, well, why make the fucking razor? Exactly. Like that only works when it's the same company doing everything.
That's why a lot of early 3DO games were published by Panasonic, because they had to make money somehow.
Yeah, and they probably didn't make a lot of money back on that thing. And even making the hardware as expensive as it was, which was so funny that like even retailers back then were just like, no, we're knocking the price down. You're crazy.
Because Panasonic dropped it pretty quick, especially when the Gold Star came out and it was half the price.
Yeah, but it's just funny to see like when the original suggested price of $700, like places like Walmart and Toys R Us and KB Toys, like they immediately docked it $100. They're like because we're not gonna sell a video game console worth $700,
especially one that has one game on the shelf.
It has one game. It's like from an unproven company. Like it's not gonna work, you know. Like, I don't know how many PS5 Pros are selling, but I know that $700 price tag still is not an attractive price tag.
No.
So,
no.
But it's a different situation.
What's crazy, though, is, like, it looked like Trip's idea was going to work at first, because, like, the ads for 3DO were really effective. Like, it was that classic 90s in-your-face, like, marketing. Like,
he definitely learned from Sega.
Oh yeah, like I love the famous put away your toys ad where they threw the fucking Sega CD and Genesis and then the Super Nintendo into the toy box, and then like it's in your face, but it's not as obnoxious as the Jaguar commercial.
No, it's still fun. It just video game advertising from that era is just kind of funny and amazing.
Like which is crazy too, because like it was so well regarded by the media that it was even Time Magazine's Product of the Year '93. Like,
yeah,
it looked like things were going to go well for it, but that price tag just.
I think a lot of people bought into the hype because Trip is a really good salesman. He's really good at the business pitches. Like he was able to keep John Madden even when the series was struggling. He was able to keep him on. And was able to sort of wheel and deal his way into EA becoming the conglomerate that it is, you know? So I think he just used a lot of those tactics he had learned in the video game industry and seeing what Nintendo and Sega were doing and trying to kind of add his own spin to it. And with EA becoming mainstream, because Madden was a very mainstream series still to this day, you know, that a lot of people were probably looking to what he was going to do. And I could see why places like Time Magazine and others, like more kind of mainstream outlets, would see the 3DO as something special. But I imagine probably a lot of like gamer people at the time were a little bit more worried about it, I think. And I can see that.
It's a fascinating thing because it's like it's one of those things where like in an alternate timeline it might have worked. Just in this one, not so much. But give Trip Hawkins credit; he valiantly stuck with this company until the bitter end.
Oh yeah, he tried his best to make it work, and I'll give him credit for all of that. Even the credit for sort of the mistakes that they made as well along the way.
Because he hired a lot of really good people to work at 3DO, like the people at Studio 3DO who later became just the 3DO company once it went third party. There were some really good developers there. You can only do so much when you release a game every 3 months.
Yeah, and then when you have the Sega Saturn, the Sony PlayStation, and even the Nintendo 64 around the corner doing better things, like more powerful things at more affordable prices and having stronger game libraries than you, because a lot of third parties aren't touching the 3DO. You have to pivot, and that's fair. And around that time when they did that third party pivot, that's when he tried to take on a more creative role and tried to like establish like, okay, like games need to be on like this kind of timeline and we need to get games out or whatever. And I think a lot of that is why 3DO fucking died. Because I bet you he saw the success of the first Army Man game and was like, that's our ticket, baby. Let's just pump them out.
Now,
because we need the money.
Which is interesting too, because the first couple years of third party 3DO, they weren't bad. Like they were actually in a pretty decent track record to be like, they could have honestly been a Sega going forward. Like, cause
they had potential. They did.
Because they famously had the first couple Army Men's, which are decent. Like
they had the Might and Magic series,
which
was very successful at the time.
They had acquired New World Computing, the creators of Might and Magic, and they basically just let them do what they were doing. Although their budgets did get slashed by the end, which shows.
I think that shows with a lot of the 3DO library of games, where it's like the further into like the PS2 we get is like you can tell these games are being made very cheaply.
Yeah, once it hit the 2000s, that's where you could tell things were starting to get really rough.
Yeah, because I think it was the games just weren't selling, and the budgets just had to keep getting slashed and slashed. So, and it shows.
Famously, too, they also made one of the first 3D MMOs with Meridian 97, I think it's called.
Okay.
Which is apparently still has a dedicated player base, and they have like...
Of course it does.
They have unofficial servers. We'll have to talk about it at some point. I don't know how we'll experience it, but we'll figure that bridge out when we get there.
Yeah,
I will find a way to play that game because it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about this.
It
looks like if Daggerfall was even rougher.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first.
Yeah, true.
But then they also had like Battle Tanks, which we've covered in the past, which is a very solid game. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece, but the story's a masterpiece. But the
absolutely,
the game itself is fine.
Yeah, and they were trying to do, I think it was like High Heat Baseball. So they were trying to have like another sports franchise, but trying to do baseball.
They did have a lot of baseball games for a while there.
Yeah, so they were clearly trying, and you can give them credit for that. But it was obviously like a sinking ship.
You could tell by the
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you could tell by because Trip. One thing that I'll give Trip is like every interview he's like incredibly pleasant, like very like into the conversation. Like he never comes off as a dick. You can tell by
I think he is a bit of a dick though.
I was gonna get into. You could tell by the end of 3DO that he was starting to crack a little bit with the infamous Portal Runner review response, which is legendary for just how unhinged it was.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think it's just like, again, to be that kind of like successful businessman, even in this era, you have to be a dick. You just kind of have to have a bit of an ego and be that kind of like a bit of an asshole to make it work. It's just it's just the nature of things, you know.
He straight up looks like a Bond villain in most photos you see of him. So it's
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of love it. Like he's got a look.
Yeah,
like you're like, this guy makes video games.
Yeah,
and
like he has. I don't know. Yeah, like he has a bit of like a snarky vibe to him, you know.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that he is okay with admitting to his failures. Maybe nowadays, I don't know. Maybe that he's older. He's like, yeah, I fucked up, whatever. You know, we all do. But yeah, I was thinking it was in May of 2003 is when they went bankrupt, and he sold most of it off. Like Magic went to Ubisoft and all that. But he apparently still retains ownership of the 3DO hardware and software. So he still owns the intellectual rights to the 3DO name. So I guess when Limited Run did their like little 3DO shirt thing, my guess is then Trip probably got a little cut of that.
Probably. Because I think I think that's famously why the M2 is mostly known as the M2, because they had sold the M2 off to Panasonic, and it was just kind of the Panasonic M2 after that.
Yeah. So, but after that, Trip formed a company called Digital Chocolate.
I played most of these games as a kid. Believe it or not.
I don't recall playing any of these, genuinely.
So
maybe I did, but I don't know.
Digital Chocolate was an interesting one. They came out in 2003, pretty much right after 3DO closed.
They went bankrupt in May, and this company was founded in October.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was
5 months. So I think he was probably getting it geared up anyway.
And Digital Chocolate lasted pretty long. Like they went from 2003 and they were defunct in 2014 because he basically sold everything to another studio called Rock You and then moved on to his next project.
That seems to be something Trip does, especially in his more recent years.
Now, unfortunately, the thing about Digital Chocolate is pretty much all of their games are no longer playable. They've all been delisted and lost to time. But so their whole thing was they were one of the first early adapters into the mobile game craze.
Yeah, it looks like they were making like Java mobile games.
Mobile games, that was JME or 2 or whatever, the Java era.
Java ME Micro Edition, I believe, yeah.
Sonic Unleashed, mobile phone edition.
Oh boy. And some early iOS games as well.
They did, because I played a bunch of these, and they had a charm to. So the reason that I played a lot of these, I didn't even realize the connection to 3DO at the time at all.
I mean, who would?
True. But a lot of their games were a bit more flashy than most games at the time. Like they had like graphics, and they actually like had a style to them. Like I remember specifically Crazy Penguin Catapult was a big one. Like it was like penguins would fly across the screen. You'd launch penguins across the screen and hit targets and stuff. Was
it Proto Angry Birds?
Not exactly the same, because it wasn't really a slingshot, but it was kind of like a similar. You were throwing avian artillery essentially.
But you were trying to like knock down like a tower of things, right?
Sort of, not so much a tower, more like you were hitting like targets. Like there was enemies.
Okay.
The other side, similar but not quite. They had a breakout clone, which was just kind of like the typical, you move the thing, break the blocks.
Everybody has a breakout clone. I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere.
Theirs was all fun in full 3D though, and it had a look to it, which is why I bought it.
That's cool.
The game of theirs that I played the shit out of was Tower Blocks. And Tower Blocks to me was cool because it was essentially you were building a skyscraper, and you'd build it in segments. And the way it worked was like they'd bring the block down on like a crane, and it would like swing back and forth, and you had to like line it up perfectly onto the next part. And like the higher you got, the higher your score was. And it was an addicting time waster. They murdered your battery. Like these games had so much graphics going on that like your battery, especially back then, would just go down, and you'd be like, great, no more fun.
Yeah. But apparently the game they're most known for is a game called Tornado Mania, which is like a weird SimCity clone, but like you use tornadoes to like destroy buildings, and then the material you grab from that, you kind of like make your own cities or something like that. Again, I don't recognize any of these games because in the early iPhone era, I did not have an iPhone. So I was lucky to have a BlackBerry at that time. So
I don't remember playing that one. I probably missed that one.
But apparently, looking at reviews, it got like IGN gave it a perfect 10 and gave it the game of the month in like December of 2006. And it got a PC port at the time as well. It's probably been delisted a long time ago, but
I believe pretty much all their games are like long.
yeah, but there's a couple of their games that have Wikipedia articles like Crazy Penguin Catapult, 3D Brick Breaker Revolution, Army Attack, New in Town. You know, sadly, the game Strip Club Manager does not have a Wikipedia page. that is a damn shame.
Party Island,
Zombie Lane, which has like a Sesame Street logo.
We missed the best one. Party Island, sexy trivia.
Ooh, I had to find out how to play that one.
Oh, there was a racing game I missed. God damn it!
You're not going to be able to play every racing game, Bill. I know you want to, though.
I did play Tower Blocks, Santa's Tower Blocks, though. I remember that. That was a special thing that popped up.
Oh, holly jolly Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah. So they seem to be a bit of a forerunner in the mobile game space. You know, before Angry Birds, before like Clash of Clans, or like all these like real big games that we associate mobile games with.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, a little bit ahead of their time.
They were all fun games. Like that was like the big thing. Like they were when I was into mobile games, because I lost interest in mobile games by like 2011. But when they
kind of stopped being interesting by that point as well.
Yeah, they lost that weird jank to them that made them cool, and then they just became.
Now they just feel like they're too polished, and they're just trying to get money out of you.
Yeah, they're
like nowadays, every fucking mobile game has just like AI generated people on there, and they're just like making you watch an ad every 2 seconds and just trying to consume as much fucking. They're commodities now. They're not games like they used to be. You know.
But like I said, in 2014, he had essentially he had stepped down from Digital Chocolate in like 2012, and he was just kind of in the background before the company had been sold off. Because he eventually then joined the board of a company called NavEvex. And they make
NativeX. Might be NativeX.
Oh, NativeX. Yeah, that's what it is. And they do advertising. Yep.
Sure. I feel like working in advertising would fucking suck your soul out of your ass.
And then he's also on the advisory board for a company called Skills, which is
esports bullshit. Yeah, esports bullshit. Who fucking cares? He has a newer startup now called If You Can Company, which, quote, aims to foster social and emotional development in children, teaching compassion and anti-bullying lessons through video games, I guess. They have a game called If.
Yeah, I tried to find info on this, and all I saw was this picture of like this cartoon deer, and I was like, I don't know what this is.
The cartoon deer is going to tell you bullying is bad.
I'm sure it's perfectly fine for what it is, but this is beyond the point of me.
I mean, it feels like it's meant to be an educational tool, you know, and sure, why not?
Well, he's kind of reached that point now in like his career where he's done everything else, so you might as well give it a shot. Try to do something for a different audience.
Yeah, and apparently he's also a professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He does I guess he does classes on entrepreneurship and leadership, which fair enough. You know, he's probably the guy to do it. And he has it. Go ahead.
And in 2005, he became the 8th person to be inducted into the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences,
which he deserved for sure. And he has an Instagram page, and I've been kind of glancing at it, and it's full of just like him pulling out random stuff, or you know, going to the gym, or you know, just Instagram stuff, right? Nothing too crazy in there. There are 3DO references in his Instagram. They're a little bit further down, but they are there.
He went through his phase.
There's a picture of, I think it's him with his son, and his son has like a Club 3DO jacket on, or a Studio 3DO jacket, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. I know when the 3DO's anniversary came out on Twitter before that site collapsed, he did make a post about it, so he does acknowledge it when the time comes.
I don't think he actually hates 3DO. I think it's just
I think he's sick of talking about it at the moment, so he's just kind of would rather just talk about his current projects, if anything.
yeah. Well, yeah, and like the whole Madden thing happened, and I think he was more willing to talk about that because he's like, oh, I created Madden. Give me all the credit. I created it. That kind of guy.
3DO hasn't quite hit its like chic moment where it's like relevant in like the public space again, and people are going crazy for it and want to know more.
It'll happen. I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen in a couple years, but I don't think we're there yet.
No, I think there's a few other consoles, like obscure consoles, that have to have their moment. I mean, 3DO got referenced in a fucking Hyperdimension Neptuneo game, so at least that's a step. Like something happened there.
I mean, it got talked about in an Amazon Prime documentary, like a mainstream one about fucking Madden. Like 3DO was talked about for a good while, like more than I expected. So there is that, and they did talk about how they were able to get a 3DO, a Madden for the 3DO,
which is one of the better Maddens.
Exactly. Go listen to our episode where we talk about it. So yeah, but when Trip is ready to talk about 3DO again, he's more than welcome on this show.
I mean, in all honesty, we've made jokes, but like, you got to respect the guy for what he did in the industry. Like, he arguably is responsible for one of the most important video game companies of all time. Yeah,
he may not have the same love or notoriety as like a Shigeru Miyamoto, a Satoru Iwata, those kind of more Japanese influencers, or even a guy like, say, like Tom Kalinske, who I think people really like Kalinske, right?
Or like a Jason Rubin. Ted Price, even though Ted Price was more to himself, but the fact that he stayed at Insomniac for all that long.
Yeah. A Nolan Bushnell, Will Wright, Sid Meier, weirdly enough, I think Trip sits with these guys as being like big, important names in the video game industry, but like he doesn't have the same reverence to him as some of those other guys. And I think that's because he was never really a game dev. Like, I think he could have been a game dev, but I think he was more interested in the business side of things and getting everything figured out on that regard. And also he was just, I'm not sure. You go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I think his biggest thing was like a lot of these other guys, like, they have latched on, like, despite most of them like leaving their companies to try and pursue other things, they still are pretty much latched onto those companies with like everything they do now. Like, they're always trying to like stay somewhat relevant with their creations. Trip's big thing was he would create something and then he would move on to do something else. Like, he was always like kind of like on the move. Like, Trip's big thing to me is he always was interested in creating something new and moving on from that, which I think is one of the reasons why he doesn't quite have that same like kind of iconic image as like the other guys. Like, people know Trip Hawkins, but they don't usually think of him as like the face of EA or like the face of 3DO, despite it kind of being the face of 3DO in a way.
Yeah. That's weird. According to his website, there's like a weird question thing where it mentions stuff about like, can you help me with IP rights for like 3DO? And it says he doesn't own or control any of that IP. Maybe he sold it off.
He might have at one point because
I wouldn't be surprised if he sold it to Limited Run.
I wouldn't either, but that actually makes me kind of upset. I'm like, I hope not.
Honestly, kind of same. Yeah, be curious to know who apparently it's a company called Ziggurat Interactive owns the rights to many of the 3DO video game titles. So they may own the hardware as well, but I guess the 3DO IP is now owned by Ziggurat Interactive, which I do know that name.
Are they like an overseas company or?
They might be. Let's see. Let's check out their LinkedIn. They're from Denver, Colorado.
Oh.
So no C's here. They specialize in classic gaming content and bring games from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to modern gaming platforms. And then you look at their website, and yeah, they have like A Boy and His Blob, both versions. A American Hero, the Blood Rain revamped stuff was them. Just a lot of like random old stuff.
So
that you
typical
would-
video game company that just likes to keep basically a nostalgia company, as I like to call them.
That's basically what they are as a nostalgia company, and I guess they own most of the rights to 3DO stuff. I mean,
I
hell,
believe-
killing time's on here.
Hmm.
Maybe if I keep scrolling down, maybe PO'd's on here.
Because I
Yeah.
believe the 3DO hardware itself is considered open source these days, anyways. So it's not like
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably most likely on that regard. But yeah, I'm seeing some 3DO stuff here as well. So I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, Trip's an interesting guy. Honestly, he's the reason this show exists in a way.
Yeah, weirdly enough.
And we'll be sure he'll definitely be mentioned again at some point in the show.
We'll definitely have him on one day. God damn it.
I'd love to. I'd love to interview him, honestly.
I mean, he's the white whale. So I think this podcast has to become successful enough to where he becomes aware of it, and then it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, I don't know if he's on Blue Sky. I'll have to look.
I don't think so.
Probably not.
He's on. He has his Instagram though.
True.
So I'm not
But,
sure what other socials he has. Oh, his LinkedIn. Should I message him on LinkedIn?
Yo, you want to be on our podcast? Please.
I bet you he gets like podcast invitations all the time.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, so next week we're actually going to be changing it up a little bit. We're going to be covering a non-3DO game period, but it is tangentially related.
A spiritual successor.
We're going to be covering I don't know why I just got all pretentious there when I said it.
That's okay.
We're going to be covering Road Redemption, the spiritual successor to Road Rash, which I have had downloaded now since basically we started the show. Brought it back, I should say. And I really have been meaning to play it, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it holds up.
I've played a little bit of it. I won't say much, but
okay.
We will talk about it next week, because it is an interesting game to cover in some regard.
Yeah, and so that'll be we'll be trying something new next week. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining us on the 3DO Experience. You can find the 3DO Experience on all your major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. And be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. Awesome site, a whole bunch of different podcasts, shows, blogs. We're about to kick off a PlayStation month of blog reviews where we'll each be covering a different PlayStation game. So that should be fun going forward. And you can also check out all the other awesome shows over on the site, like Superpod Saga, Super Ghost Radio, Retro Rehab, Tommy's Video Game Ride Along, A Novel Console, Bar Silence, Find Time, The Elder Trolls Gaming Podcast, Remember 64, Gaming Together, Friday Night Gamecast, Gaming and Collecting, The 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, The Retro Wildlands, Press B to Cancel, The Pre-Order Bonus Podcast, Retro Mo Reviews, and what is Tommy's new show called again?
Tommy and his friend bullshit. I don't fucking know.
Tommy and
it's his friend.
Tommy and Grant Go Podcast.
Grant. God fucking Grant.
Because Tommy can't control himself, and he's been on. He retires and unretires more than Brett Favre.
Brett Favre.
Yeah, yeah. Glad we were thinking the same.
Jinxies.
Yep. I'm glad we were thinking the same direction there.
Aaron Rodgers, don't go to the Vikings, please.
Oh, he still plays, right?
Well, that's the thing. He went from the Packers to the Jets like Favre, right? And he has now left the Jets, or the Jets have parted ways with him. And people are wondering where he's going to land. And some people are saying he should fulfill the prophecy and join the Vikings. And I'm like, please, God, I would be horrified. Absolutely horrified. I don't think it's going to happen. Like the main one, that there are some teams people are thinking of, but the Vikings are not in that talk. They're in that talk for the funsies, but I don't think it's like a legitimate place he's going to go, because they don't really. I don't want him. I don't know.
Is
We're
there-
not gonna get a performance from him like we got 09 Favre. Like that's not gonna get a performance from him like we got 09 Favre. Like that's just not gonna happen.
Oh, that would be funny.
Oh, that season. Oh man. Oh boy. I could do a whole podcast about my experience with the 09 Viking season, but that's another topic in itself.
But yeah. Anyways, guys, be sure to, at the time of this recording, the time this comes out, the following day, be sure to check out the SuperPod Network. We'll be doing a super show over there. Not sure if it'll be live or not, but keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, we're doing it Thursday, I think.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Not sure what we're doing, but we'll find out when we get there.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about the state of play or some other whatevers.
Shoot the shit like normal.
Sounds good to me.
But anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with?